In the time leading up to the Onyx-Obsidian War, Dita started putting plans in motion to change Fenrir once the fighting was done. However, King Ingvar can only think about the fights ahead. He needed to be focused if Obsidian was going to defeat Lord Kaza and the Onyx army. He was prepared to do whatever was necessary to bring Fenrir into a new age, the Obsidian Age. This meant many things to King Ingvar, but primarily he wanted to establish a new world that didn't rely on the former gods and goddesses. The mermaid, the witch, the wolf, and the elf were all missing and had been for years. There was no reason to continue to put stock in their ways and beliefs. If Fenrir was going to grow for the better, it needed a new direction and to shed its past. This was the opposite of what Lord Kazai believed. Lord Kazai was an honorable man who put the legacy of Fenrir above all else and would stand against King Ingvar for that very reason alone. King Ingvar fought for the future, while Lord Kazai was determined to preserve Fenrir's history for the sake of the Fenins. The war was no longer on the horizon, it was here, and every Fenin on the planet waited to see who would make the first move. Dita rushed quickly through one of the Obsidian camps. News had just reached her that King Ingvar had returned from their final rounds of recruits, a group brought in from Vorpal, a town formerly believed to be off limits for war recruitment. Ingvar was forcing the new members of his army into pairs, and having them fight to weed out the weak. While Dita made final preparations for the war, and took care of managing those that had already passed the king's tests. When Dita arrived at the tent that King Ingvar was waiting for her in, she was surprised to see Ingvar sitting down. She thought for sure he would be chomping at the bit to get on the fields of battle, or getting ready to rush headfirst into Onyx territories. The king's large frame leaned slightly forward. He was tall enough to see the maps and figures placed on the giant war table in front of him. His larger-than-average hand cupped his chin as he was lost in thought.
I didn't expect you to stop at the camp. I would have been more prepared for your arrival,
said Dita. She joined King Ingvar at the war table.
What concerns you?
As you know, Kazai and his men were also in Vorpal while I was. I believe I recruited the stronger fighters. What is your opinion on the quality of recruits so far?
Dita surveyed the map before looking at Ingvar, whose eyes never left her.
Permission to be honest?
You of all people never need to ask for that. Tell me.
Dita grabbed one of the figures off the table. It was a wooden troll. She held it up and looked at it as she spoke.
When we started recruiting within Obsidian, especially the towns at its core, you could tell these people lived for battle, that their only concern was bloodshed and killing their enemies, prime candidates for war.
Your concern lies with the recruits from Triton, and even more so now in those from Vorpal.
Yes. These Fenins from Triton have never even considered being part of this war. It was sprung upon them unexpectedly, and none of them were willing to be a part of a fight, let alone a war of this magnitude.
King Ingvar stood up and walked away from Dita, shaking his head, before turning around to face her again.
Whether born into this life or forced to fight, is the future of our planet not worth it to them?
Dita placed down the troll figurine.
I think most of them were fine with their quiet lives in Triton, and to be blunt, don't really care about your ambitions, or Kazai's for that matter.
Then divvy out roles as you feel necessary. Those less capable protect the children and elderly. Those capable, but only concerned about their farms back home, will be bodies on the battlefield, leaving room for those willing to take up arms and find openings in Onyx's defenses.
You send them to their deaths for no reason.
King Ingvar grabbed the smallest figure on the table, a wooden figure of a sheep Dita was using to represent those unable to fight.
Everyone has a purpose. Kazai will have less soldiers because he babies those too weak to fight, while I will do what it takes.
The response brought some concern to Dita's face, but she chose to change the subject.
The recruits from Vorpal will arrive soon. I will make preparations to evaluate and prepare them.
There is one I would have you evaluate further than the others.
This was the first time King Ingvar made such a suggestion to Dita.
Oh? A standout, and from a neutral territory, no less.
He must have been a passerby in Vorpal. An unfortunate circumstance for him becomes a benefit to our army. He's a seasoned warrior, no doubt. Cut down a few of my finest within seconds. Former sellsword, perhaps. His body is covered in scars. When he arrives, I want you to have a one-on-one conversation with him. Pick his brain. Find out what makes him tick. His agenda. Then send him right back to Vorpal.
Dita moved one of the figures, a wooden soldier, over to Vorpal on her map.
You're sending him back? Letting him go?
No. Mask it as a scouting mission. If he has stipulations that are manageable, you give him what he wants. We need Vorpal and Trident in our control so that we can force all of the fighting to the middle of the continent. That way, no one can escape, and Kazai has no choice but to face us head on.
Dita moved some figurines as Ingvar was speaking, then stopped to survey the map.
It makes sense to limit the playing field. Are you intending to go through the middle of Onyx? As you know, my opinion on the matter is that Kasai expects that. I think everyone expects that.
Good. Let them believe the most obvious.
King Ingvar grabbed a figure on the table, sculpted to look like him. He admired it as he spoke.
We want Onyx to believe they know what we're going to do. But since I feel the control of Vorpal and Trident is so important at the start of this war, then Kazai most likely feels the same way.
Then the first fights of the war will ironically take place in neither Obsidian or Onyx, but in Vorpal and Triton.
Exactly. That's why our new scarred friend will be going back. Just in time for Angelica to start a fight that he won't have a choice but to participate in.
And if Kasai sends troops to Triton while our focus is on Vorpal?
A small grin appeared on the God King's face as he placed the figurine meant to be his counterpart down on Triton on the map.
Then I will be there to crush them.